Before the light, there's always the dark. Before the rise, there's always the fall. Before the blessing, there is always the breaking. But most people run from the breaking. They curse it, avoid it, mislabel it as failure. What if they're wrong? What if the pain was never punishment, but preparation? What if the tearing apart was God's way of making room for a life far bigger than the one you were settling for? What if the very thing that shattered you was the thing that set you free? This is not a story about success. This is not about easy answers. This is a message for the ones who stayed when it was silent, for the ones who kept walking through fire and found purpose in the ashes. Because you don't receive the blessing before the breaking. You earn it in the dark. There's a silence that comes before the breakthrough. Not peace, not calm, but a silence so heavy it feels like suffocation. A silence filled with unanswered prayers, closed doors, sleepless nights, and the echo of your own doubt bouncing off the walls of your soul. It's the silence that comes right after everything you counted on breaks. That moment when your plans unravel, when your strength gives out, when even your faith feels like it's on life support. But that silence, that stillness, that space where nothing makes sense and you start to wonder if maybe you missed your calling entirely, that's the sacred ground. That's where real transformation begins. Not in the spotlight, not in success, but in the breaking. You see, everybody wants the blessing, the influence, the wealth, the clarity, the calling, but nobody wants the crushing. Nobody signs up for the season where you lose everything except your breath. Yet, what if I told you, the breaking isn't punishment, it's preparation. Because what if you're not being buried? What if you're being planted? What if this chaos is the curriculum? What if this loss is how life reorders itself around your next level? Think of every person who ever built something timeless. Thomas Edison failed 10,000 times before the bulb burned bright. Carnegie was a messenger boy before he built steel empires. Disney was told he lacked imagination before he redefined it. Even Moses had to wander the wilderness for 40 years before he saw the promised land. What do they all have in common? The blessing didn't come before the breaking. It came because of it. But we don't see the crushing in the highlight reels. We don't see the breakdown behind the breakthrough. We want success without surrender, victory without vulnerability, anointing without affliction. But the truth, the blessing you seek, lives on the other side of the breaking you're avoiding. And here's the hardest part. The breaking doesn't ask for permission. It comes without warning. It rips away comfort. It forces you to confront who you are when there's nothing left to pretend with. You'll scream, you'll question, you'll curse the sky. But that's when heaven leans in. Because heaven doesn't multiply comfort, it multiplies character. And character isn't forged on the mountaintop. It's built in the valley, in the ash, in the furnace, and no matter how alone you feel right now, you're not forgotten. You're being formed. Because the blessing doesn't come when you're strong, it comes when you're surrendered. When you finally let go of what you thought life should look like. When you stop clinging to broken identities and expired visions. When you fall to your knees, not in weakness, but in willingness. Willingness to start again, willingness to trust again, willingness to believe there's still a future with your name written in gold across it. But here's what most people never understand. The breaking isn't the end. It's the initiation. It's the moment you become eligible for the life you were always meant to carry, but never strong enough to handle until now. Because God won't give you what your character can't protect. He won't pour new wine into an old wineskin. He won't promote you while you're still enslaved to fear, ego, or people-pleasing. So he breaks what needs to be broken. The relationships that are draining you, the patterns that are caging you, the lies you tell yourself that keep you small. He allows it to collapse, not to destroy you, but to deliver you. And if you're in that place right now, if everything feels like it's falling apart, let me remind you, you're not losing your life. You're being rebuilt, piece by piece. Brick by brick, vision by vision. And the more it hurts, the closer you are to the truth. Because growth isn't graceful. Elevation isn't elegant. Purpose doesn't come through convenience, it comes through cost. And if you feel like you're being stretched, stripped, shaken. Good, that's the sound of destiny making room. That's the feeling of old identities dying so something divine can take their place. And you won't be the same after this. You're not meant to be. You're not supposed to be soft anymore. You're not supposed to fit into old spaces, entertain small talk, or explain your vision to people committed to misunderstanding it. You've been broken, not to be bitter, but to be born again. This is the wilderness before the promise, the crucifixion before the resurrection, the pruning before the harvest. You're being carved into someone who can carry the blessing without losing yourself in it, but it takes discipline now, mental warfare, spiritual maturity, because the enemy doesn't fear your talent. He fears your transformation. He fears the moment you stop bowing to your past, the moment you start walking like the authority you were born with, the moment you realize that every scar on your soul is proof you survived what was meant to kill you. So walk with your head high, not because it's easy, but because it's necessary. And when the world asks how you're still standing, how you still have hope after the fire, you smile and say, because I was broken. But I was also built, and the blessing, the real blessing, didn't come in spite of the pain. It came through it. You see, the world told you to chase comfort. It told you the goal was ease, applause, security, and balance. But God is not building comfort. He is building capacity. And capacity is forged in pressure. Capacity is revealed in storms. Capacity is proven when you keep walking, even after everything familiar has been stripped away. Ask Noah. He didn't build the ark when the skies were clear. He built it in obedience while the world mocked him, while there was no sign of rain. That's what faith looks like in the breaking. Obedience when nothing makes sense. Action with no evidence. Sacrifice without applause. Because blessings aren't rewards for playing it safe. They're crowns for those who kept building in silence. And yes, it costs you. It costs friends. It costs comfort. It costs the old version of you that settled, waited, avoided. But you weren't born to play it safe. You were born to be set apart. Set apart from average. Set apart from excuses. Set apart from patterns passed down through bloodlines of fear. That's why you felt like the black sheep. That's why you've never quite fit the mold. Because your destiny was never meant to be common. And when God is getting ready to use you, He doesn't consult your feelings. He doesn't wait until you're emotionally ready. He starts cutting. He removes what can't go with you. He exposes what's fake. He allows pain to reveal what you couldn't see in peace. It's the breaking that makes you dangerous, because you can't be manipulated anymore. You can't be distracted by surface-level success. You don't flinch when people leave. You've already lost. You've already wept. You've already bled. And now you know who you are, not because someone told you, but because the breaking revealed it. And hear me clearly. There is power in the identity that emerges after the fire. Because before the fire you were guessing, you were hiding, you were overcompensating. But after the breaking you walk different, not cocky, confident, not loud, unshakable, not perfect anchored. That's what the breaking does. It doesn't just humble you, it hones you. It refines your sight. It sharpens your hearing. It deepens your faith until you don't just believe in God, you trust Him in the dark. You stop needing proof to move. You stop waiting for clarity to obey. You stop asking how long and start saying however long it takes, because you realize it's not about speed, it's about strength. It's not about how fast you build it, it's about how deep your roots go. And roots don't grow in public, they grow in the hidden place, in the silent nights, in the tears no one sees, in the worship that happens when you don't get the answer. That's the part no one talks about. That's the blessing behind the curtain. The discipline you developed, the self-respect you rebuilt, the quiet courage that kept showing up when nothing made sense. You didn't just survive the storm, you became a storm. You became unshakable, not because you avoided pain, but because you walked through it. And now you carry weight. Not just influence, spiritual weight. The kind that shifts rooms, the kind that breaks generational patterns, the kind that silences fear when you walk in. Because people feel it. They feel the cost, they feel the depth, they feel the fire in your words, not because you read about it, but because you bled for it. And now you understand, the breaking wasn't the curse, it was the catalyst. It was the reason you stopped begging people to believe in you. It was the reason you stopped apologizing for wanting more. It was the reason you finally chose yourself. And choosing yourself isn't selfish, it's spiritual obedience. It means saying no to what no longer aligns. It means walking away from what numbs your calling. It means declaring, I'd rather be alone in truth than surrounded in illusion. That's what the broken know. That's what the anointed understand. That comfort is cheap. But calling will cost you everything fake. And if it hasn't cost you anything, you haven't tapped into it yet. So today, don't resent the breaking. Respect it. Let it keep stripping you of your need for perfection. Let it burn away the addiction to approval. Let it destroy every excuse that kept you mediocre. Because the blessing is real. The door is coming. The overflow is waiting. But not for the old you. Not for the comfortable you. Not for the version of you that's settled, compromised, and negotiated with your calling. The blessing only falls on the becoming. And you're becoming something sacred. Not overnight, but every single day you choose faith over fear, discipline over doubt, movement over hesitation. That's the road, that's the process, and you're not behind. You're not late. You're right on time. Because the blessing always comes, but only after the breaking. And if you're still wondering why it had to hurt that bad, why it had to collapse that hard, why they had to leave so suddenly, why the door slammed before you could even knock, it's because the blessing you're called to carry couldn't afford contamination. Your calling required a clean vessel, not perfect, not polished, but purged. Because heaven is not casual with destiny. And God does not multiply purpose in a soul still shackled to counterfeit peace. So yes, he allowed it to fall apart. Yes, he allowed the silence to stretch long enough to test your sanity. Yes, he let you taste what isolation feels like. Because only in isolation do you start to see the difference between what's essential and what's ego. It's where masks fall, it's where character rises, it's where the show ends, and the real you finally walks in. Do you understand what that means? It means the breaking wasn't punishment, it was permission. Permission to stop pretending. Permission to heal from what you kept busy to avoid. Permission to let your soul be seen without needing to be saved by someone else. Because the real blessing is not the platform, not the money, not the followers. It's alignment, it's peace that can't be bought, it's clarity that doesn't need approval, it's waking up in the morning and knowing who you are when nobody's watching. Let me tell you something sacred. Some of the greatest blessings God will ever give you will come dressed as loss. Some of the most divine turning points will look like failure from the outside because God hides treasure in trouble. He hides strength in suffering. He hides purpose in pain, not to punish you, but to protect it from those who would cheapen it. That's why he had to hide you. That's why the doors didn't open. That's why your name wasn't called yet. Because you're not meant to arrive empty. You're meant to emerge full of wisdom, full of resilience, full of anointing that didn't come from a conference but from the cave. You didn't learn this in theory. You survived it. And now you don't speak from potential, you speak from proof. You know what it's like to cry and still show up, to break and still build, to question everything and still keep walking. That's what makes you dangerous to darkness. Because the enemy can't use shame on someone who's been shattered and stood back up. He can't guilt someone who's been forgiven, rebuilt, and refined in the furnace of affliction. That's why the breaking had to happen. Not to ruin you, but to free you. Free you from addiction to timing. Free you from needing to be understood. Free you from the shallow validation of people who only love the polished parts of you. Because the version of you emerging now won't shrink again. Won't tolerate less again. won't betray your own spirit just to feel seen. You've seen too much, felt too much, endured too much. And now you carry presence. The kind of presence that doesn't need to yell, the kind of presence that doesn't need to explain, the kind of presence that walks into a room and changes the atmosphere not because of titles or trophies, but because of truth. That's the gift of the breaking. It leaves you too real to fake it, too whole to chase crumbs, too clear to settle for confusion. So stop mourning the version of you that had to die. She was brave, but she wasn't built for this level. He was determined, but he couldn't carry what's coming. They got you here, but they can't take you further. And that's okay. Let them go. Bless the version of you that hustled that mask, that survived. But don't resurrect them. You're walking into a room that only responds to truth, not talent, not charm. Truth. So here's the truth. The breaking was brutal, but it worked. The fire hurt, but it healed you. The silence scared you, but it sanctified you. And now when the blessing comes, you won't just enjoy it, you'll steward it, because it doesn't own you, it doesn't define you, it didn't make you, the breaking did. And the greatest gift God ever gave you wasn't the answer. It was the crushing that brought you to the end of yourself so he could finally begin. Do you know what happens when you break a seed? It dies, it splits, its outer shell cracks wide open. Everything that once protected it is gone. But from that breaking, life begins. That death, it's the beginning of rooting. It's the start of something unseen, buried in dark soil, far from praise, far from applause, far from recognition. And isn't that where you've been buried, forgotten, overlooked, cracked open? But what if you're not buried? You're planted. What if this entire season of isolation was God pressing you into the ground not to hide you, but to root you so deeply that no storm can uproot what he's about to grow? Because the tallest trees don't start in sunlight. They start beneath the earth, invisible, under pressure, becoming stronger in the dark than they could ever be in the light. And you're becoming that tree, a life-giving force, a covering for others, a place of stability in a world that sways with every wind. But you can't bear fruit if you're not first broken. And the fruit that matters isn't flashy. It's faith. It's peace under pressure. It's character when no one's watching. It's discipline when no one's clapping. It's choosing what's right over what's easy again and again, because blessings without roots will collapse. Influence without integrity will destroy you. Favor without foundation will feel like a curse. That's why the breaking had to come first. To build you quietly, to test you privately, to remove every brittle part of your identity that couldn't carry the weight of your future. There's something sacred about the people who've been broken. They speak slower, they listen deeper, they don't waste words trying to impress. They've been to the edge and they know what matters. They don't chase approval. They don't beg for platforms. They walk like they've already been refined by fire, because they have. And you're one of them now. You may not have realized it yet, but you've crossed over. You no longer fit in rooms where truth is optional. You no longer feel comfortable in shallow conversations. You're no longer energized by performing, because performance died in the breaking. Now you're after something real. Depth, purpose, presence, not just in others, but in yourself. You've stopped chasing timing and started trusting divine order. You've stopped rushing God's hand and started obeying his whisper. You've stopped asking why me and started saying, use me. That's what the breaking does. It silences your ego. It wakes up your spirit. It replaces your addiction to answers with a peace that surpasses understanding. And from that peace you build. You build things that last, not rushed, not reactive, but resilient. You build from alignment, not anxiety, from identity, not insecurity, from faith, not fear. And here's what most people won't understand. The blessing isn't what changed you. The breaking did. The blessing revealed what the breaking refined. Now when favor finds you, you won't fumble it. Now when doors open, you won't beg to be let in. You'll walk through them with clarity, with conviction, with clean hands, because the breaking cleansed you. The wilderness woke you, and the silence strengthened what applause could never reach. So if you're still in the dark, don't curse the soil. It's holy ground. It's training territory. It's where heaven does its most sacred work. It's where roots grow, where layers peel, where the old version of you finally lays to rest so the unshakable version can rise. And make no mistake, you will rise. Not the same, not unscarred, not naive, but real, rooted, refined. The kind of person God can trust with weight. The kind of person no storm can shake. The kind of person who doesn't just get the blessing but becomes the blessing. Because when you've been broken by fire and built by God, you don't walk into rooms needing to be seen. You walk in ready to serve, ready to shift, ready to steward what others only dream about. Because now you know the blessing comes, but only after the breaking. And now you understand why it had to happen that way. Why the door you prayed for didn't open. Why the person you thought would stay had to leave. Why the thing you built with your whole heart was allowed to fall apart. Because God wasn't trying to hurt you. He was trying to hone you. You thought you were losing everything. But you were only losing what you were never meant to keep. And what stayed, what remained, that's what's real. That's what's holy. That's what's yours. Because when God breaks something, He doesn't do it to discard, He does it to reveal. To reveal the truth underneath the noise. To reveal the calling hidden under the clutter. To reveal the version of you that only pain could uncover. The version of you that doesn't chase you attract. You no longer knock doors swing open when you arrive. You no longer prove your presence speaks louder than performance ever could. This is what the fire forged. This is what the crushing created. And if you're still picking up the pieces, if you're still limping, don't rush the process. Let the oil drip. Let the ache teach. Let the tears baptize every broken expectation. Because even the pain has a purpose. Even the ashes are holy. You are not the failure. You are not the abandonment. You are not the loss, the betrayal, the rejection. You are what rose from it. You are what endured the storm and found stillness. You are what survived the death and chose resurrection. You are what stayed faithful when nothing made sense. And now you're ready. Not ready for comfort, ready for calling, not ready for applause, ready for assignment. Because what you went through was the preparation for what you're about to walk into. You've passed the test that can't be graded on paper. You've won the war that no one saw. You've developed the kind of faith that doesn't flinch anymore. And when people ask how you got here, they'll expect a formula, a strategy, a plan, but all you'll say is, I was broken and I didn't quit. Because the truth is, you didn't need the path to be perfect. You just needed the courage to keep walking. That's what the blessing responds to. It doesn't chase the perfect. It flows to the faithful. Those who show up when no one's clapping. Those who obey when no one's watching. Those who believe even when they don't feel it. That's you now. That's the new standard. Not hustle, not hype, not hustle, disguised as healing, but stillness, obedience, wisdom. You no longer move for attention. You move from alignment. And that shift, that inner recalibration, that's how you become the blessing. You stop asking for it. You start embodying it in your words, in your presence, in the way you choose to love without agenda and speak without fear, in the way you walk into rooms and silence the noise, not with dominance, but with depth. Because now you understand you didn't survive the fire to stay the same. You didn't get pulled from the wreckage just to blend in. You didn't get another chance at life just to repeat old cycles in new scenery. You came through the breaking for dominion. Dominion over your fear, dominion over your patterns, dominion over every false voice that told you you weren't enough. And when God breaks something, He always rebuilds it stronger, wiser, cleaner, sharper, more dangerous to the enemy than ever before. And that's exactly who you are now. Not broken, rebuilt. Not bitter battle tested, not lost launched. This isn't the end of your story. This is the activation point. You've been formed by fire, refined by waiting, and positioned by pressure. You didn't fold when it got hard. You didn't run when it got quiet. You didn't settle when it got lonely. And now the blessing is no longer something outside of you. It flows from you because it's in you. And when they ask where it all began, you'll tell them the truth no one wants to hear. The blessing came after I was broken. And now we stand at the edge of everything that once broke you, looking back, not with regret, but with reverence, because what you thought was the ending was the moment you became indestructible. You see it now, don't you? The blessing was never just about things. It was never about the house, the title, the check, the likes. Those are shadows, reflections of something deeper. The true blessing is this: you become someone the world can't shake. You've become the storm that once scared you. You've become the voice you once searched for. You've become the strength you once begged to borrow from others. And it didn't happen on mountaintops. It happened in the valleys. It happened in the lonely car rides, in the quiet nights, in the unanswered prayers. It happened when you chose integrity instead of compromise, when you chose peace over performance, when you chose the unseen over the urgent. That's where power is born, not in noise, but in obedience. And now your blessing won't be a surprise, because you built for it, you bled for it, you went through fire and didn't just come out, you came out clean. And people will say, you changed. They'll say, you're different now. And you'll nod not out of pride but gratitude, because change was the point. You were never meant to stay small. You were never meant to stay silent. You were never meant to stay in rooms that required you to shrink so others could feel big. The breaking destroyed your need to be liked, and in its place, God gave you clarity. Clarity about who you are. Clarity about what you're here to do. Clarity about what matters when everything is stripped away. And maybe the world still doesn't understand you. Maybe some people still doubt. Maybe your name still isn't called in the circles you once chased. But that doesn't matter anymore, because your identity is no longer up for debate. It was written in the fire, and now it's sealed by the fruit. The way you love without needing anything back. The way you walk into chaos and speak calm. The way you pour out wisdom, not from books, but from battle scars. That is the evidence. You are the proof that breaking doesn't bury its births. And the world doesn't need more perfect people. It needs poured out ones. People who've been crushed and still chose love. People who've been burned and still chose truth. People who've been rejected and still chose to rise. That's who you are now. You don't walk like someone who had it easy. You walk like someone who kept walking when it was hard, who kept forgiving when it didn't make sense, who kept building when nothing was working. And this is the part you never saw coming. Now that you've been through the fire, you don't fear it anymore. Now that you've been through the loss, you're not owned by what leaves. Now that you've been through the silence, you no longer chase noise, because peace is your power, conviction is your compass, obedience is your rhythm. And you are unshakable, not because the world made it easy, but because the breaking made you ready. So when the blessing shows up, and it will, don't shrink, don't question if you deserve it. Don't wait for someone else to validate what God already approved. Just receive it, not because you're perfect, but because you stayed faithful, stayed available, stayed grounded when everything told you to run. And now you walk with light inside your bones. You lost everything you thought you needed, and now you carry everything you were born for. You were crushed but not cursed. You were broken but never abandoned. You were tested, and now you are trusted. Trusted with weight, trusted with wisdom, trusted with blessing, because God never multiplies in the hands of those who haven't first surrendered. And you didn't just surrender once you laid yourself down again and again and again, until what rose from the ashes wasn't bitterness but beauty. And now your life is a song, a testimony, a declaration, a signal fire to everyone still in the breaking that, yes, it hurts, yes, it strips, yes, it feels like death, but if you don't quit, if you stay in the process, if you let God finish what He started, the blessing will come And when it does, you won't just receive it. You'll carry it like it was always meant for you, because it was. And now we arrive. Not at the end of your story, but the moment you realize you were the story all along. The miracle was never the blessing. It was never the breakthrough, the money, the open door, the new chapter. It was you, still breathing, still believing, still moving forward with battle wounds you no longer hide because they are holy. You are no longer a prisoner to the past. You are no longer waiting for the right time. You are no longer negotiating with fear for permission to live. You are walking proof that the blessing does not come to those who avoid pain, but to those who walk through it with their eyes on purpose. And yes, the breaking bent you. It brought you to your knees. It made you question your own name, your own worth, your own calling. But when everything was stripped, when your pride was shattered, when your expectations were leveled, something divine was planted where pain had once rooted. Conviction. Not the kind that shouts, the kind that whispers, "I'm not going back." You've seen too much, you've grown too deep, you've heard too clearly in the silence of your own breaking that God wasn't absent. He was editing your story in real time. He was removing what could not stay. He was subtracting what threatened the promise. He was cutting ties with futures that would have drained your soul dry, because he knows the weight of the blessing will always expose the weakness of your foundation. And if he's going to multiply, he must first purify. And now the sun is rising, not just in the sky, but in you. You feel it, that silent strength, that unwavering peace, that unshakable voice inside whispering, "It's time. Time to build again. Time to love again. Time to dream again, not with fear, but with fire. Because you are not who you were. And thank God for that. You don't speak from theory now, you speak from testimony. You don't need validation now, you carry vision. You don't live for survival now, you live for significance. And as the world watches your life unfold, as the fruit of your obedience begins to bloom in places where ashes once lived, you will be tempted to look back and mourn what you lost. But don't mourn nothing that God removed. Weep not for what was never meant to walk with you into destiny. Because when God breaks, he breaks with precision. When he removes with mercy. When he delays with protection. And when he blesses without sorrow attached. You are not behind. You are not broken. You are not late. You are becoming. And this season you're in, it's not punishment. It's positioning. He had to remove what clouded your clarity. He had to remove what drained your energy. He had to remove what kept you attached to a lesser version of yourself. Because now finally you're ready for more. Not more applause, more alignment, not more fame, more faith. Not more options, more obedience. Because the one who has walked through the fire and didn't curse it, who has been broken and didn't abandon the process, who has waited and worshiped anyway, that one is trusted. That one carries power. That one is you. So rise, not as someone trying to prove your worth, but as someone who has already paid the price. You've earned your peace. You've fought for your focus. You've guarded your growth with tears and truth. You don't need to chase anything anymore. Just move in alignment. The blessing will chase you. Because the heavens know what man could never measure. You were faithful when it hurt the most. And that is when the multiplication begins, not before. But after the breaking, if this message found you in the dark, maybe it's because your light is about to rise. If something in your spirit was stirred, then don't silence it. Feed it. Because the world doesn't need another distracted soul scrolling in survival mode. It needs voices like yours, awakened, aligned, and on fire with purpose. So if this shook something loose in you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone else walking through the storm. Drop a word in the comments. Let your voice echo. Tap like if your spirit whispered, This was for me, not for algorithms, not for vanity, but because someone out there needs a reminder. The breaking isn't the end. It's where the blessing begins.